So I've been doing this channel for a hot minute, about 4 years. Yeah, 4 years, maybe a little over. Decent reception, growing, still growing. But one of the videos that I have the most views on, especially lately, is one from August of last year, considering a Dell Slimline, just an older office type computer. And it was actually the cheapest one I could find on Amazon at that time. Today we're going to see if it still holds up. So originally I bought this thing for about 150 bucks. It came refurbed with a i5 4670, I believe it was, and it had 8 gig of DDR3 memory. It had a hard drive in it, just a regular spinning hard drive, and I did a few little things. I replaced the hard drive with an SSD. I went ahead and put 16 gig of DDR3 in it, running at 1600 instead of 1333, and I went ahead and upgraded the video card. I put what ended up being an RX 6400 in there. Now, the 6400 is a newer card, but it is a low-profile card, so it fits nicely in that Dell computer, kind of making it into a little bit of a gaming computer. Now, I did do some tests on it. I did do a little bit of, hey, how does it work now? But that's where I kind of left it. I didn't do much past that, but since then, we've had a whole slew of newer games come out. So maybe it's time to see how these updates and newer games are actually working on this Dell Office computer that we bought for, at the time, $150, upgraded it to about $400 worth of upgrade, just short of 400 or right around 400. But now, it comes in quite a bit cheaper. So to give you a little bit of background on that, we went ahead and the Dell now is selling for about 90 or 95 bucks on Amazon, still a refurb. I don't know if you're going to get the 4670 or 4650 or whatever it was that I got in mind, but it advertises, I think, at 4550. Still an i5, still pretty good. It does still supposed to come with 8 gig of memory, and I believe it still comes with a regular hard drive. Swapping these parts out, the SSDs now are a little under 40 bucks, or right around 40. The memory is right around 35 or so. And that video card, the RX 6400, comes in at about 150 bucks. So now you're talking about buying this computer for under 100, all the upgrades and everything. You're sliding out of this for under 300 bucks. So for $300, is it a decent computer? Is it a decent gaming computer? What can you play and what can't you play? Now, I will tell you this. Some games like Far Cry 6, they take more VRAM than that 6400 will have. Most of the time, trying to get a decent frame rate off of that is going to be a little bit difficult because no matter, even if you're on, say, 1080p low or 900 low, it's still asking for more than 4 gig of VRAM, and that 6400 just doesn't have it. Are you going to be able to stream with this? No, because it doesn't have an encoder on that video card. But can you play games? Yeah, probably. So I decided to go ahead and run 3 games with this. Now, we could go back and run a bunch of older titles that we already know. I ran a bunch of benchmarks earlier, like I said. But we're testing out what is now a $300 computer just to see how things work out. Tested CyberPunk 2077, Red Dead Redemption 2, and Far Cry 6. Even though we know that Far Cry 6 is going to have a problem running on this computer, we still want to test it out. We want to try it and see what kind of performance we can get out of it. So as I've started out with CyberPunk 2077. First thing I did was try it on 1080p. 1080p medium settings, I believe it was, and then I had the FSR set to quality. Yeah, not great. It ran through okay. It had some stutters, about 32 frames per second, which is where if you're playing on a PS4 or an Xbox One, you're getting 30 frames per second anyway. You could probably lock this at 30 frames and it would look all right. But I chose to do a little bit of digging around and playing around. So I went ahead and tried 900p and 720p. And I went ahead and put balanced the FSR to balance to see what that would do. That was a little better, 44, 46 frames per second. Smoother, looked okay. So I thought, you know what? Maybe I can run balanced with 1080p on low settings and see what that looks like. Well, it did. It ran a little bit smoother. It looked okay. It surprised me that it still looked okay. And I got about 40 frames per second, which I think is probably fairly playable. You can always step this down a little bit, but I don't think stepping it down to 900 or 720 is going to net you that much more, it might be a little bit smoother experience, but I don't think it's going to net you that much better average frame rate. It turned out looking okay. So can you play CyberPunk 2077 on this older 4th generation i5? Yeah. You might have to tweak a few things, but it's playable. Then I went ahead and I moved on to Red Dead Redemption 2. So it looks like the default for Red Dead Redemption 2 is 720p on low settings. Well, texture quality is ultra. I'll look at that in a minute, but everything else says low or medium. So 720 low is what it defaults to. The menu gives us about 45 frames per second. Let's see if we can make that full screen and see if we can do anything at all. I went ahead and ran, and it turned out okay. It ran fairly smoothly, looked pretty decent. Got me about 69 frames per second. The benchmark for this runs through a bunch of different scenes first, and then it runs through a scenario where, you know, he's robbing the store or whatever and having to run. So there's a lot of action. There's a lot of like slower, like panning of scenes in the beginning of it, and there's some action sequence in the end of it. So overall, almost 70 frames per second. Looked fairly smooth, looked pretty decent, but I thought maybe I could do just a little bit better. So I kicked that back up to 1080 low, and I went ahead and the texture quality, instead of having it at ultra, I dropped it down to high. This ended up doing okay too. I mean, it's not 60 frames per second, but it averaged about 53, and it was fairly smooth. So I didn't have too many issues with that. And in some parts, it played really, really well. So again, another hard title to run. CyberPunk was one of them. Red Dead Redemption is another one. Both of these are known for like really, really killing the system that has problems with the CPU. Plays okay. Then I went ahead and did Far Cry 6. Now, the biggest problem with Far Cry 6 is not necessarily the CPU, it's the GPU, because it requires more video memory than that 6400 has on it. It usually requires, even if you're doing low settings on something, it usually requires like 4.5 gig or sometimes 5 or something like that, and that card only has 4 on it. So it's trying to borrow resources from somewhere besides the video card. So I went ahead and ran this at 1080p, low settings, and very much to my surprise, even though I did get the little warning that said, hey, look, it's over, it accounted for that, it fixed that, and it ran at 60 frames per second. And it wasn't even bad looking. I ran the benchmark a couple times, and I'm fairly happy with the results. So the one that I thought was going to give me the most trouble actually performed the best at 1080 low settings. So can you play newer games on this older 4th generation refurbished Amazon special, the cheapest one I could find on Amazon at the time? Can you, in essence, play AAA titles on $300 worth of computer? Answer's yes, and I didn't have to sacrifice a kidney to do it. It actually went pretty well, and it played. The benchmarks ran fine. I was able to adjust the settings without any problem. Never gave me any kind of warning like, oh, this game's not supported or anything like that. Everything worked out pretty well. So overall, you don't have to spend an arm and a leg trying to build a brand new system. There are plenty of these Optiplexes out there on Amazon, eBay, and several other these places. Or if you've got a friend that's got an old office computer they're getting rid of or something, you might be able to put a couple $100 into something and make a very, very playable game. A lot of these titles are getting more optimized, and they're getting a little bit easier to run on some of this older hardware. And the more they do that, and the more patches like Cyberpunk's 1.6 patch, I believe it might even be a 1.7 now. The more these get optimized and patched, the better they run on older hardware. So all is not lost. You don't have to spend a fortune to be able to run something and play games. So like I said, this continues to be something that people go back and it's one of the more popular videos on this channel. And I just kind of wanted to do a follow-up because I kind of left it for a little while. But now going back and running some newer titles, some newer games, especially like Cyberpunk, Red Dead Redemption 2 that came out several months ago, and Far Cry 6 that came out like a month and a half ago, these run pretty good. And I can't really complain. Now, I haven't gotten around to getting Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I don't know how well it'll run, but the more reviews I see about that, the more it seems to run okay on older hardware already, and it's optimized for older hardware. So it looks like they want the most amount of players they can get for that, so it's a fairly easy game to run. That might be one of the things we have to check. Anyway, that does it for this video. I just wanted to kind of follow up and show everybody that I didn't quite forget about the Optiplex. I've been playing around with it, but there's been a lot of other stuff to do. It is one of the more popular videos, and I wanted to do a follow-up. So there you have it. I hope it helped. I hope it answered some questions about what you can do and what you can't do. Remember that because it is a slim line, you're going to need a low-profile card, and that's the reason why I put that RX 6400 in there. You can find other low-profile cards, but that one has such a small space that you're going to have to run something like an RX 560 or maybe that 6400, or maybe if you can find a single-slot 1050 or 1050 Ti. That you might be able to do that way, but it's a tight fit in there. You're better off, if you can, finding a wider Optiplex and doing that with a full size. That is all I have for this time. Don't forget to visit me on all the other socials. I got the website at ThatPaulGuy.tech. I've got a gaming channel that hopefully will be starting here this week. It depends on how quickly I can edit this video and get this in the can and get it posted, so I can go ahead and start on that one. But yeah, so we got a lot of stuff going on. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that stuff. Tell everybody, hit me up on all the other socials, all that good stuff. And the one other thing I'm going to ask you, especially now that we're getting into holiday season, we're having Thanksgiving and Christmas and several other different observances and holidays, and everybody just kind of take a second. Be nice to somebody. Be good. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't take any effort to be nice, okay? So do that. You might find somebody will be nice to you, and kind of makes you feel better, doesn't it? Anyway, that is all I have for this time. So until next time, when I figure out more stuff to go, I might go back and visit that all-in-one cooler. I've done some work on it. We're about to plug it into a system and see if it works. If it does, there might be a video. If not, yeah, who knows? Anyway, until next time, folks, I'll see you later.